Great. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on whichever part of the world you're logged in. First of all, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Sami, and I'm extremely delighted and pleased to be part of this special event, which is the launch of the book, Right in Power, an anthology of the politics and personality. So I would like to kickstart this meeting with a couple of very quick admin mentions, logistical mentions, which is depending on whichever places you're logged in from, please try to keep yourself on mute. The objective of this meeting is to raise a bit of an awareness. It's a noble cause. We absolutely appreciate the contribution of multiple authors, editors, and different people who have contributed towards the development of this book. We highly appreciate. And the biggest part is that this is going to go into all the proceedings of the sales from the book is contributed towards a very noble cause, which is for the education and enhancing and supporting the education sector for the needy people in Bangalore. So to kickstart the proceedings, I would like to welcome on stage Ria Rodriguez Mukherjee, who's going to be our moderator for today. Ria is the author of The Body Myth, Penguin 2019. She's a Bangalore-based writer and activist working in the space of gender, social justice, mental health, and animal rights. She co-runs Write Leela Write and also facilitates creative writing workshops, currently mostly online for the obvious reasons, on a very regular basis. So Ria, welcome on stage. Good morning. Which part of the world are you logging in from?
Good morning, Mohammed. I'm logging in from Bangalore. I'm actually in Pondicherry for a few weeks, so I completely forgot about that. But I'm in Pondicherry in Tamil Nadu in India.
Great, welcome on board. So I think with this recording is also going to be available, and it is live currently on YouTube link of Haadibadi Foundation, as well as on the Facebook Live. So anyone who is joining us and listening or watching, we would welcome your support, your comments, any questions that you might well have. Please leave it there in the comment section. We shall try to answer them as much as possible as well. And if you would like to be answered from a specific author or editor, please direct that question to the name of the editor or the author that you would recommend. So Ria, before I hand over this to you, can I ask you a quick question? Could you give us a little bit of a background to everyone who has joined and to everyone who's watching? Could you give us a little bit of background as to what kind of efforts or what made you guys think about launching a book of this scale and its content? Can you give us a little bit of a preface summary, basically?
Sure, thank you. And first of all, thank you so much, Mohammed, for all your support up till now. And thank you everyone for joining in. I think everyone is really excited, especially the editors who are probably breathing a sigh of relief that they have finally got this together, because it takes an ocean of effort to get so many intersectional writers, not only to contribute, but to find harmony in an editing, in a flow of work that really speaks to so many voices. And so, this is what we're here to celebrate today and talk to so many people about. So whether you're joining in right now live or you're watching this later, we hope that you'll be able to participate, even talk to the editors later on, message them, and probably give a word of support or a question or a comment to some of the authors who have written over here. So today we have all the editors of the book, Right in Power. And we have Vijay Lakshmi Harish. Maybe you can just put your hand up and say, hey. And we have Vijay Lakshmi Harish. We have Anushri KS. We have Rohini Malur. We have Vijay Shanti Murthy. And we have Meenal Srivastava. Right. And
Thank
we,
you. Thank you for that, Ria. Yes, I think in total, if I get it right, there are about 16 to 20 authors and editors who have contributed mainly.
yeah, I will. I mean, I'm gonna with the numbers. I'm gonna have to double check with the editors. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it is a tremendous work. I can imagine the various coordinations as to put this whole thing together. I will now continue to leave it with you in order to ensure that you get all the questions, various thought process, what has gone into the work, and what should people expect by reading this book, and why should they be going ahead and reading and contributing. So please, I would like you to share more thoughts in this, and I would really like you to lead this discussion in terms of trying to get some more insights from the people we have got together right now from different parts of the world. Over to you, Ria.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mohammed. And like you said, we have a whole bunch of authors in the book, Write in Power. But today with us, we have 10 writers, and they are Anamika Devdas, Anjali G. Sharma, Arpita Prakash, Farah Naz, Piyusha Veer, Shivapriya Ganapati, Sonia Dogra, Sumaya Tasneem Haq, Rishika Antalya, and Tanushri Banerjee. I think I got everybody, but I will be speaking to all 10 today and asking a bunch of questions about some of their really radical and powerful work. And how we'd like to really start this off is that we have a special guest today with us, and that is Kirti Jayakumar. And she is a peace worker, an activist, and a writer. And I'm really super excited, as are all the editors, to have her with us today. She's actually going to talk about the book and kind of the heart behind it. And I don't know what else. I'm really excited to hear. And so I'm just going to allow Kirti to go ahead and talk about Write in Power. And thank you so much, Kirti, for being with us.
Hi, Ria. Thank you so much for that very glowing and kind introduction. I hope I do justice to all the kindness you sent my way. Before I begin, I'd just like to thank all the editors and the authors for this beautiful piece of work. I can't say I have digested it fully because there's so much thinking that's still going on in my mind. So I'm not going to speak about the book as much as I'm going to speak about what the book has done for me and the seeds it has planted in my head, because the authors and the editors are here to do the rest of the talking about the book itself. Just before I proceed also, I'd just like to invite all of you to really think about how this book can change your life when you get into the rest of this conversation. This isn't like most other books. It's titled Write in Power, and I think these are beautiful letters to power, really. If the COVID-19 pandemic has really showed us something, aside from the fact that we're all worried about a pandemic and a disease, it is the fact that the world order that we have been normalizing, taken for granted, assuming to be the norm and believing that there is no other alternative has failed us egregiously. It is a sullen reminder, the pandemic is a sullen reminder of the fact that this world order cannot go on. It has failed not only the everyday common life of those in positions of privilege, but has miserably and egregiously and doubly failed those it has already and normally oppressed, historically. Whether that is the migrant crisis that we saw last year and continuing even as we speak, because the media isn't shining a spotlight doesn't mean it's over, or the armed conflicts that have festered across the world and even aggravated in so many measures. This system has broken irretrievably. We've been talking about building back better. We've been talking about a new normal, both of which are capitalism at work. We're not here to build back systems that have failed us. And if we're steadily on the course to rebuild that, we're not learning enough from these times. Systemic and structural violence have long since existed and have been deeply entrenched even in the ways we think, the ways we consume literature, the ways we consume films, the ways we interact with each other and the language we use. Our militarized tendencies, whether that is in our behavior, in our attitudes, in the ways we manufacture and present our opinions, are all part of this massive military industry complex. Right and Power is really an invitation for all of us to look at building that feminist future that we owe to ourselves and generations after us. To me, a feminist future is about finding community and commonality, and finding spirit and solidarity, and refuting systemic and structural violence all the time. Commonality and solidarity do not take away the many things that have placed us in different places in life. They should not. And meaningfully, if we want to be able to transform systemic and structural violence, we need to account for where we're standing and use that positionality in ways to check our privilege. And Right and Power, Right and Power gives us the space to really do that by planting seed after seed in us. And for me personally, I think this is an adventure each of you will go through in your own way. It is a way for us to find where we stand, how our privileges continue to keep certain oppressions alive, and how we haven't checked it enough to be able to make that change possible. As a perennial student of peace education, one of the things I've constantly tried to do is to acknowledge that at the root of all forms of overt violence is systemic and structural violence, at the root of which is trauma. And therefore, the agenda of systemic and structural violence is to keep that trauma alive, to keep that wound bleeding because somebody is benefiting from it. War is business, militarism is business, sexual violence is business, casteism is business. And it's high time we stop feeding these businesses and making a profiteering market available and possible to continue. So Right and Power, which I'm so grateful to be able to speak about, and I don't know if I've done justice to the authors or the editors by bringing these themes up, but this confronts structural violence, and in the most gentlest of ways through the written word. I've always believed that you don't need to tell a person your point of view and expect them to change to that. Just plant a seed of doubt. And every piece, be that a piece of poetry, a piece of fiction, an autobiographical rendition, or a piece of art, just does that. I would ask you not to read this in one setting. Please don't. That would do grave injustice to what this book offers. Consume it. Hold on to a journal, hold on to a notebook, and then allow this book to consume you. And think through every piece that you read, every piece that you see, every piece that you observe, and try to use that as an inflection point for you to evolve onto a higher plane and to take more people alongside you. We're going into a festive season for most parts of India, and I think arguably for most parts of the world. Use this book as a beautiful gift. If we want to gift ourselves a future, start by gifting this thing that can give you a place to start thinking about the future and building it together. Thank you so much for giving me space to share. I hope I haven't overstepped any boundaries in sharing my thoughts here, but it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you again.
Kirti, I need to applaud that. That was so powerful and so needed, and just the absolute right tone setting for a book like Right and Power. And just like you said, we can't keep reestablishing systems and trying to fix systems that have completely failed us. And I love what you said about planting seeds versus forcing a thought or a binary or evangelism, which is also a product of capitalism, which is also a product of trying to show you the right way. Planting seeds and allowing the autonomy that something is wrong, that something needs engagement or consent or a space to kind of have a dialogue with the world is so powerful. And that's exactly what this book does. I really want to applaud your no BS intro to it. It's so important in a world like today that you cut out the BS, and that's what you did. So thank you for that. So as we move into this book, and before we get into a few, start talking to the editors, I would like to introduce Geeta from Haadibadi, and I would like to invite her to please talk about the collective, the organization, and also I understand there's going to be a video played about it. So Geeta, would you please go ahead? Thank you. So much.
Thanks, Riya, and thank you, Kirti, for actually setting the tone for this whole event. And it was very powerful, and I think I want to really extend it from there. The concept of systemic violence, so the concept of systemic injustice is what we are all fighting towards. And I would very much say, our efforts from Haadibadi is to actually be able to address the systemic injustice. So yes, Haadibadi Community Library is one of, like, it's set up in Bangalore as of now, and then we are extending our work with many of the organizations and schools, particularly government schools and low income budget free schools. One of the aspects that we are certainly trying to address is to upholding this cultural and cognitive diversities of communities. And in this context, we have been working with these communities with through dialogues, art, discussions, and very much by ensuring accessing resources, making possibilities that children and youth have access to best of the resources, best of the platforms. So we have been working to create spaces and avenues for engagements, dialogues, to bring up the voices. And so children, particularly from underprivileged communities, are able to access the library. And so far, one observation that I certainly have to say is, with the increase of capitalism and the way the cities are growing and the way the places for freedom, the places for thought has been shrinking, it's very much important that there are still spaces for childhood to be explored, for childhood to be nurtured in a free and imaginative space. In that context, and it is a right of every child, and we are actually seeing lacking that space either in public spaces or even the schools where children are going to. So in that aspect, children find the space a very promising ones and very safe, particularly for girl children. So our most a lot of young members who are accessing the library, are girls children who cannot go to the street for playing because there is no grounds for them, or there are not enough spaces in the school. But there are instances where they find these community libraries to be accessible, and they can come and explore that space in their own time and with a lot of freedom. And of course, bringing dialogue and discussion and ensuring access to resources is something that happens along with that. Yes, there is a small video that will be played and will give a little bit glimpse on why we have been doing this work and how we would like to continue this. And thank you so much, the Hidden Pen Collective and all the writers for actually extending your trust and belief and actually supporting for this cause. And I'm sure there will be a lot more women writers who will, and a lot of young writers who will come out of this effort as well. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Geeta. That was lovely to listen to, and to see that there's a collective and organization that is thinking about these things, accessibility, reading, imagination, from the point of view of systemic issues, from that point of view. So important. I think, Vijay Shanti, you're going to play the video. Thank you so much. And thank you, Vijay for managing that. So I'd like to bring our attention to the editors of Right and Power. I have a few questions for them. And these are open-end questions. You can answer however you'd like, whoever would like to answer them, or maybe a couple of you. So the most honest thing about a truly intersectional, embracing an intersectional book means that at some point, yes, there are some obvious things that we'll all acknowledge when we read about, when we read other people's voices and works, but there'll always be a space to be surprised by certain voices too. And that is the beauty and magic of intersectionality, and how it can expand our notions and how it can challenge a lot of things that we've been okay about. So I'd like to know to the editors that when you were starting this and embracing the entire idea of inviting different voices, was there any big surprises in terms of the end product? Did any, in comparison to what you started with, how you started to envision the book and what it ended up being? Was there any surprises? And take the word surprises as you will, it doesn't have to be a dramatic thing per se, but something that clicked in your head that, I didn't expect this to come together with the anthology.
I absolutely think Vijaya Lakshmi should answer this first. She was the first person who came up with the idea, and then Meenal and Anushri joined her and pushed it forward with some other people who can't be here today. And so I'm putting you on the spot, Vijaya Lakshmi. Vijaya Lakshmi put up a little post that said, "We should do this." So.
Yeah, thank you, Rohini. I think the biggest surprise for me is that the book exists. Like, I look at it every day, I'm like, oh my God, it exists. Because when I put up the idea, I don't even know what I was thinking, but I put it out there, and I guess I have a bunch of enablers around me because they took this absolutely bonkers idea I had and they said, let's do it. So I'm just thankful to everyone, like everyone who commented on that initial post saying, let's do it. I'm really thankful to Meenal, who was the first person who called me and said, I'm ready to help in any way you need. And then Anushri, who suggested that, if we are doing an anthology like this, we have to make sure that there are so many diverse voices involved. And then, Rohini and Vijay Shanti, who are our conscience keepers, essentially, making sure that we kept it diverse. So it's, I don't know. I mean, it's like the biggest surprise for me, like I said, is that the book exists. There were so many moments in between where I've absolutely just sat and cried because I thought it's not going to happen. So I'm just really, really happy that it exists. So now I'm just leaving it to the other editors for them to tell what surprises they had from the book.
No, that's beautiful. And I agree. That's a surprise by itself because it started as a wish, something that you wanted, a desire to do, and it happened because of other people. So would any of the other editors would like to comment on this?
Maybe I can go next.
Yes, please.
So, yeah, I think the speed with which we managed to do this, to me, that was the surprise. It was kind of the idea that we will do it very quickly. But the fact that we actually did manage to do it very quickly was quite surprising. But also along the way, we learned so much. And all of that learning, I would put it as surprise. I mean, it challenged us a lot. We learned a lot about our own assumptions and our own horizons were expanding as we were working with authors and the conceptualization of the book. So I think it was overall such an amazingly rich experience of learning for all of us. I'm very, very grateful for that. But yeah, in terms of the surprising aspect, I think some of the things that caused delay were also surprising. That, we didn't expect some of the logistics to take as much time as they did. But at the same time, the way it started on August 15th, 2020 and ended, we revealed our first kind of cover on the 16th of August, 2021. That's like warp speed in the publishing world. So I think that to me was the most amazing thing, but it's obviously because we had such a committed team, the editors, the authors, but all those people who have gone who've done a lot of work behind the scenes and who are not even acknowledged, because it's not even possible to acknowledge the work of so many of the people who supported us, but also supported the project. So, and I have to say a shout out to Sanjeev here. He did a lot of background work on the formatting of the various versions. So I have to add that. At the same time, there were a lot of people in the background who worked. And so, yes, so very thankful to everyone for their work on this.
I think my surprise was right at the beginning. I kind of walked into the project not skeptical, but cautious, because I didn't know anyone on the team. I didn't know what they wanted. I think when it became, there were several moments when it became real to me, but one of those moments was when I was reading my first read through of the entries. And that was one of the moments when I went, okay, this is serious. There are serious entries here. There are people who have written some things that are very beautiful here. And I remember being in the edit team a bit later, like fighting for a piece, like this is what this piece does. I don't remember which piece that was now. I just remember that feeling of this has to be here. I am going to explain until this piece gets in. But I'd bought in to the whole project as opposed to thinking of it as someone else's project. So I kept being surprised. And like now, once the book is out, I don't think I have. I am so impressed at the people we managed to invite into the collection and what we did, because in many ways it's a very intimate collection. These are all people whom we know through Facebook, friends of a friend of a friend. This wasn't like a business call put out by Penguin. This was a call put out by like one writing group and that group of people. So that to do that kind of also reminds me of my extended community and all of these people whom I have not paid attention to or didn't know that were there. And like suddenly you're reminded that your world is already that your world is intersectional, and that it has this amount of skill and talent to say what it needs to say. So I've been like re-surprised over and over. And like Vijay Lakshmi said, I've lent my copy of the book away. I had to have lent them both, so I can't hold it right now, but just looking at the book is overwhelming. Like a whole book. Yes.
Thank you, Rohini. Anushri and Anushri, would you like to say something?
Yeah, so I'll just take what Rohini said forward. So when we began this whole thing, we were called Women of Political Writing, which included the MXN. So the fact that in the middle of almost the entries coming, we had made our first announcement, and we wanted the entries to come in. And Rohini had shared a couple of entries, and that's how she walked in as an editor, because that's where she pointed out a very relevant fact that by stating women right in the title, we are not exactly very inclusive the way we want it to be. So, which is how the entire transformation from Women of Political Writing happened to the Hidden Pen Collective. And that was our first learning, because that's exactly where a lot of things could have gone wrong. And I'm sure we have made mistakes even in the anthology. We could not really include everyone that we wanted, because a lot of things and the entries and all of that. So a lot of hiccups also happened. The second thing that surprised me really a lot was when we began the whole thing, and when I said yes to this, I did not really know that a few strangers who have never ever met each other and who have literally spoken for the first time during this anthology, and all the communication happens on chat. We had hardly like a few calls, but those were very technical, to discuss very technical aspects, and there was not really, because each of us is so busy in our own schedules. and everything was happening on chat, and it's so easy to misinterpret a chat, you know. And in the world that we live currently, the kind of social media, you know, terror that is happening everywhere. um, it was such a big surprise and a very happy surprise that everybody, you know, managed to come together, managed to resolve our conflicts together, because, you know, imagine 6 different opinions and 6 different very strong opinions coming together. And there were clashes, of course, and but the way we pulled through it, and none of us quit, and we wanted to talk it out, we wanted to communicate, was another lesson for me, because it is so important in today's date to write, if you're writing well, or just pick the call up and, you know, sort the misunderstanding. So that was another surprise, because everybody on this is a stranger. I don't know them, I've not met them, not once. So it's a great thing that has come together, is what is a surprise for me. Very happy surprise.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, I would like to add
something.
one surprising moment that I had was when the book started to redefine what writing means in the conventional sense, right? In the academic field, you need a certain kind of discourse and you need a certain kind of writing to get it published. But when they called for entries, they clearly mentioned, if you have written for your blog, if you've written for your Facebook page, that's perfectly fine. We will look into it, right? This sort of is changing the idea of what writing could mean for many young people, and that also could be published, because publication and publishing houses also, of course, comes with a certain kind of power which sets a standard, and who sets the standard is a question. To sort of deconstruct that was happening when we were reading writings and entries, right? That was the first surprise that I had. The second surprise was when writing was constantly called as labor, because all the contributors here, thanks so much, they all did not do it by getting it paid. They did it for a cause. Not to glorify this, but constantly a question that we sort of discuss is, what does this labor do? How are we going to make use of this labor, and how are we going to collaborate? That was something that was surprising to me, looking at writing as labor. And of course, the third surprise and the last surprise, that of course, with all the surprises that the co-editors mentioned, is, what does intersectionality mean? From starting from the editors to the writers to the genres, and who's going to purchase the book and who's going to be in the receiving end, within quotes, right? At every level, the intersectionality was important, right? From caste, class, religion, sexuality, genres, from poetry to autobiographical accounts to visuals, everything. So I think that conviction that we have for intersectionality was reinforced with the discussions that we were having, and when it was seen as in the end product. So yes, those are the surprises that I had. Thank you.
And they are pretty astonishing surprises, because people coming together, and because, like you said, like intersectionality means so much, but it also means listening. And like how Anushri also discussed, that when there are things that come up, you not only like you say yes, and then you open up. It's not about making the perfect book, but it's about asking more questions and listening when something is said. And that's exactly what this group of editors did together collectively, along with the writers. So that's quite spectacular. Really quickly, I would like to ask the editors one more question before we move on to the writers, because a lot of you are contributing editors in this collection. I wanted to know if anything about your pieces, sharing your pieces, was scary. Did it release any shame? Did it make you feel liberated, weird, hopeful? There's no right or wrong answers. I just want to know what you personally felt putting some of your work out here. And maybe Vijay Lakshmi wants to start us off.
So I have something in the book that I never usually do, which is a piece of art. I do not consider myself an artist. I would say I'm a writer, but somehow I didn't end up submitting a piece of writing for this book, because I'm having a hard time with writing in general right now. But Vijay Shanti was supposed to do a piece of artwork, which was supposed to accompany one of the poems. And I was like, you know what, let me try. And it was a good experience. I mean, for someone who has always thought of herself as bad at art, I was like, okay, this is like, people are liking it. So, it made me feel good about myself. But also, I kind of wanted to let go of this idea of that good and bad and all those binaries. So it kind of helped me with that as well. So yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't want to invalidate how you feel, because we all come with our baggage. But every time you say this, Vijayalakshmi, I'm like, what is this? You've designed our cover. You did that beautiful piece in the book. You talked about the design from the start. So you clearly have that. And letting go of binaries is good. Good. But within the binary, you're really excellent. So
thank you. Thank you so much, Rohini.
I'd like to, since I've already started talking, I submitted pieces that I've already submitted to other places, but oh god, my internet's going. But I really only felt it when my mom read my piece, one of my pieces, and then she cried about it, and I was like, okay, I've done something honest here. I've done something. I mean, not. And also horrifying, because this is not what I intended when I put the piece up. But suddenly you realize more people are reading this, but also people whom I know, whom I haven't shown this work, are reading it. So then suddenly it's more public, but also more privately available than it was before. Before it was just on like a place where only queer people would read it, and I didn't share it with my mom. And now there's a book. My mom obviously read it, and then it's like, okay, we have to talk about some of the things you're talking about, because I was there, or I should have been there for this. So the things that I would have said then, I want to say now. So that I still haven't made my my closure, my peace with that.
Thank you, Rohini. Meenal, would you like to share?
Sure. Yeah. So I wrote a piece about my hysterectomy. And the reason why I wrote about it is because I felt the need to normalize conversations about women's pain, women's bodies, women's lives. So yes, it was a big move for me it was life-changing for me for all kinds of reasons, but also in terms of how I process things is often by writing. So this was one of the ways I was processing something big that was happening in my life. But also I see it as an autoethnography where I'm a political economist, and I'm very, very conscious of the world we live in, and the personal is always political, and vice versa too. So this is kind of practicing what I teach and preach. So in that sense, on some level, I was ready for it. And on some level, I'm still not ready for sharing such an intimate journey out there in the world. But at the same time, I know it's important. I feel that the privileges that I have, if I'm not able to talk about these things, then how do I expect those who are really repressed and suppressed and have no possibility of raising their voices and sharing their stories? So my hope is that just as it took a lot of courage for me to speak up and share my story, that others will feel emboldened and share their stories with abandon, which is not what I did. It's a bit of dark, humorous tone in there a little bit, but yeah, it's a process that I'm not, just like Rohini said, I'm not completely comfortable with it, but I know the importance of telling that story, which is why it's out there. Now I can do nothing about it.
That's beautiful. And I like that you admit that it's both uncomfortable, but the whole intent is that so others can be more and more unabashed about it. And I resonate with that when I write my own books. Thank you, Mrinal. Vijay Shanti?
I think I agree with both the editors about sharing personal experiences, because my writing is in the format of a letter. It's a letter written to my father. This was written, I think, 8 months after his death. It was a very emotional moment. And when this was sent to, of course, the other editors, Meenal was the one who edited along with the others. It was really nice to see the way it was taking shape. One, I think I'd go back to what Gidla says in her book, Ant Among the Elephants. Our stories are not considered stories. And it's important to tell such stories. Of course, Atwood also says something similar. At the end of the day, we all have stories. Though I've read it, as a person, it's difficult to incorporate in your own life, because personalist political is something that you sit and teach to students, but when you have to do it, it's putting you in a vulnerable position. And as a writer, to move beyond that vulnerable position is a journey, right? What are the readers going to think? You should probably forget them, is what Perumal Murugan said in one of the interviews, but it's not that easy, right, to take that journey. I think that was happening when 5 editors read it, and of course some of my friends who read it gave feedback, and some people asked, okay, do you think this line would be okay, right? It made me rethink about what does Dalit identity mean for me, right? It's been a journey, and I think there has been a change in identifying as well. There has been vulnerable moments, of course, but it's also important to put your vulnerable position, because if you hide it, it is going to tell that this is not something that you have to feel. Again, at this moment, I'm saying this, the next moment, I really don't know how I'm going to feel, right? These were the emotional aspects. And moving to the photo essay, that was really a surprise, because I'm not a trained photographer or anything. I just like clicking it. And when I remember when I said, can I send it? They looked at it and they were like, yeah, why not? Because it's important to tell a story. At the end of the day, yes, technical elements are important, but can we try it? Right? This sort of gives confidence to people who are starting to write. This gives confidence to people who are starting to explore themselves. So this was a platform which in some way gave that confidence, I would say. Yeah. Thanks to listening to my story.
I have to mention, sorry, Riya.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
I have to tell people to follow Vijay Shanti on Instagram. She's Neela.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
She is amazing. Her photographs are mine.
Stories.
I mean, they are the highlight of my Instagram every day.
Yeah, these keep saying I'm not an artist, I'm not a photographer, and they are excellent.
They're being really kind. Thank you.
I think this is really interesting that Anushi just brought that up, and it's true because it's already happened 3 times now. Like, I'm not an artist, I'm not a photographer. I've written only on Facebook. And I was just going to say, in today's world, when you're putting something on Facebook or Instagram, it is you're accessing the public. That is publication by definition. And like Vijay Shanti said, that publication, of course, publishing houses have different standards, and they're a power structure by itself. Absolutely. But also putting your work out there as it is also art. It is publishing. It is giving the public free access to your work, which is publication. And so I just think it's really interesting that we're saying, people are saying, I'm not an artist, I'm not a photographer. I agree. Vijay Shanti's work on Instagram is amazing. She goes by, she has a series called Street Stories, right? Street Stories. Yeah, that are just beautiful. And thank you for...
if I may interrupt you for a second, Ria, this goes back to what Kirti was talking about, right? A lot of the violence that is inflicted upon those of us who are marginalized on any parallel, it's a business. And that business, it is the business that also tells us whether we are writers, because the business says, okay, we'll publish you, we'll promote you, we'll put you on, we'll put you in a museum, we'll have a curated show of your art. And that, it's like, that's why suddenly you have this range of very talented people. I'm going to be vain. I'm a part of these people, and then we're like, I'm not a writer, I'm not a poet, I'm not an artist, I'm not a. But we are. We're just not a business, which is very, very, very different from what we're actually saying. So we have this business of the professional that is also political, that is also personal, and we it's a good reminder right now to stop saying it, or to remember what it means when we say it.
Yes. And as I segue into the writers, I think it's a perfect opportunity to Vijay Shanti, which is asking what it's that she teaches her students, the personal is political, but then being asked to act on it is a very different thing. And I also want to say that this is part of it, like you sharing your story and even talking about the contradictions and the ironies and the inconsistencies is also a part of the personal is political in action. And the group right now sitting here together on a Sunday or a Saturday night, depending on where you are, all of us, to discuss these larger ideas of inclusivity and hidden stories is a part of that in action, like right now. And as Rohini's mother crying when she read her daughter's story is also a part of that. So I think that's something that we can all reflect on in some way. I would like to start talking to the writers. We have 10 writers with us today, and I would like to start with our writer Piyusha. Piyusha Veer is there. Hello. So in the interest of time, I would like to give all the writers about a minute to answer. You don't have to answer my question directly. It's not like I'm just like here to give you one sturdy question. You have to answer it exactly. It's just a way to tell you how I experienced your reading, and maybe you want to just jump off from there. So Piyusha, you have both a poem and visual art in the anthology, but both merge into each other in a very potent stance, one that rawly projects the amount of policing fences a woman works within across the intersectional divides. Parts of your poem also remind us that this is true even for the most seemingly brazen vocal person who speaks for those who cannot. They are subjected to certain parameters of accessibility, always dragging the ropes of patriarchy with them. And yet, your artwork, which is really, really, really interesting, right? Because it shows us two possible perspectives. The same painting could be viewed as two women enjoying their time on a swing, or as you say, hanging by the threads of survival. How do you think your work and experience writing for this book allows the reclaiming of pleasure, desire, and joy within the oppressive structures we inhabit? Do you think that pleasure has been vilified to the extent that many women, many people don't feel like they have the right to access it?
Thank you for the question, Ria. I am really glad that you think they merge together. I think that was the attempt to individually, but also together, express what women and other oppressed communities face every minute. We have to exist within regressive, restrictive systems, and yet we're not allowed to speak out against them even. The constant advice is keep quiet, adjust, this is the way that it is, you better deal with it. And the second we start to speak out against it, we taught a lesson. To the point that not only have we ourselves forgotten that we deserve better, that these consequences are not our burdens to carry, but rather the oppressor's attempts to erase us and silence us even more. So I think somewhere, both of these pieces, the poem and the artwork, was my own attempt at reminding myself and everyone else that we deserve better. We deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. We are entitled to our rights to exist, to express and live the life that we want to, with choices that we want to make, and not just exist, but also thrive and flourish. And this time, we will not be silenced or pushed into the background, no matter what the society does, no matter what these regressive systems do. We will emerge stronger. We will find a way to continue dismantling these regressive structures, and we will continue to express our pain and our pleasures the way we want to.
Thank you so much, Piyusha. Yeah, and just as Rish just pointed out, yes, it's not our burdens to carry. And I love the hope, but yet the holding of pain that is true. At the same time, that simultaneous assertion is very important. Thank you so much for your work. I would like to say hello to Anjali Sharma. Anjali Ji Sharma.
Yeah, hi Ria. Hi everyone.
Hi Anjali. How are you?
I'm doing good.
So your poem, The Vortex, talks so much about the cages we come born into and how that can have so many losses and unsaid desires. Particularly these lines, which are quite my favorite. The asphyxiation of biases and patterns have smothered her each moment. The de facto is to merge, to become one of the herd. But your poem is hopeful also, ultimately, talking about liberation, possible path to resurrect, assert oneself. Do you see chances for liberation as this one static finish line, or a series of moments that can come unexpectedly in between various oppressive realities? How do we celebrate these in meaningful ways? I ask you this because you also work with girls from underserved communities. Do you think exchanging courage and experience of our intersectional struggles is a form of celebration for our pain to liberation?
Yeah, thank you, Ria, for reading it from that lens and appreciating the piece. This piece, when I wrote it is not usual for me because I'm not poetic or something. It came to me because of something intense that I experienced while working with the underserved girls. And this was an attempt to, bring forth the hope amidst the struggles of that they face every day, maneuvering through the challenges of patriarchy and misogyny. And most of the times, like the dreams getting shattered while being in the cages of claustrophobic conservatism. And I was listening to Kirti when she opened this forum. She said that right in power is about planting those seeds and triggering discussion. So that's what was my attempt with this poem also. And talking about hope, like you said, that it brings hope. Thank you for that. This hope comes from the courage and conviction. And, each episode, each small thing is important. It's not a big celebration, but we even, building an opinion of yourself, asserting it, saying that, yes, these are my choices. I would not blindly follow what somebody else is asking me to do, but I'll choose my own path. Is a celebration, is a milestone, brings hope. And how can we, make it, ensure that it creates a ripple effect is by making sure that these stories are shared, these stories of courage, conviction, and stepping out, breaking out are shared in their own communities by them. We have role models. So I would say, yes, it's not a static line. It is a continuous celebration of each small and big milestone. So yeah, and it has to go on, and it will create its own impact in time. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the entire editorial team for putting this compelling work together. It's a privilege to have my voice out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anamika. And I really enjoyed the fact that you thought that even just changing your mind or having an opinion or forming something that's a little bit different from the status quo is a celebration itself. I completely resonate. Thank you once again. I would like to now talk to Anamika Devdas.
I'm sorry, Ria. Anamika has not been able to make it today, but she sent in a message, which I just read out.
Yes,
she says that she couldn't make it because of an emergency, and she sends her apologies. She says about her piece that she believes that cosmic elements are very great things. They stimulate our imagination and give us peace and solace from everyday problems of life. And that was her thought behind that beautiful series of 10 short poems that she has.
Thank you. Is Arpita Prakash with us?
Yeah, hi.
Hello, Arpita. So Arpita, your short story Chameleons is quite a devastating read for me. It took a while to kind of process that. Although there is a lot of hope in the end, and a lot of wit and sass also in the end. But at its heart, it's an illustration of how so many women are mere possessions in the grasp of patriarchy. And your juxtaposition between the husband and the goons, right, is what's really interesting because they mirror each other. One is, thought to be societally evil, the goons. The other one has a lot of social sanctity and has approval, no matter what the behavior is. So do you think that this power of storytelling allows others to see how and where we've institutionalized cages for women and gender non-conforming people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, writing is kind of, I mean, many people have said this before me, writing is a mirror of the kind of society we live in. And this violence against people who are considered to be lesser than, the straight, line that is the patriarchy. So, there is violence, and we have violence of different kinds, not just the slap that the husband gave to the wife in my story, but just because he was bored. But there are different kinds of violence which may not be, physical or so obvious to people. I mean, just me refusing to wax my arms is a kind of a rebellion against the set patriarchal standards.
Yeah.
And it is somehow I feel that this story, when I wrote it with, not just to highlight the violence that is there, the cages that are built around us, but also with the little bit at the end that gives people hope that, there is a way out. And since it is said that literature mirrors society, we have to start writing about how to find ways out of those cages.
Absolutely.
It is not enough to just write about what is happening. For people who are marginalized, you have to give them tools, give them ways, or just write about positive things so that they can imagine that difference in their reality. They can imagine that there can be something different. So I teach a bunch of teenagers who are underserved, and with them I've had various discussions on teenagers. So there are hormones at play and things like that going on. So one time some boys were talking about some girls, that I like this girl, or this girl looks at me like that, and all of that. So I kind of had to stop them there and ask them, do you think you're going through a hormonal change in your body? So they said yes. So I said, is it exclusive to men? Is it exclusive to boys? Do you think girls go through hormonal changes too? And that stopped them, right there, because then they didn't think that girls are allowed to think about boys like that. And this, we're talking about children who have like one pair of shirt and one pair of trousers, one shirt and one pair of shoes for forever. So it is they just stopped in their tracks, because then they realized the girls sitting in their class who are their friends are probably also going through the same thing. They are feeling the same things about the boys, but they're not allowed to vocalize it. So that's also a kind of a cage. So writing about these things kind of, or talking about them kind of gives a kind of an escape, a way out, a little key to people to think of options. Yes. So that was my idea, about writing something like this, because we see what is there. I think almost all of us know or have been through some sort of experience of violence, sexual or otherwise. But the little bit at the end was my main aim there, to show that there are ways out. So that was it. And also I'd like to thank everyone, for doing such a wonderful thing with all our little creations. And it's a privilege to be a part of this. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Arpita. I really think that it's important to even just to give people the consideration of another imagination. Like the ending of your story had some anarchy to it, and that needs to be there, to say that you can just, put your middle finger up to everything. even if it's just fiction, even if somebody can't possibly do it, to have that imagination also is a liberation, and that works towards that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Farah with us? Farah Naz?
Yeah, I'm there.
Hi, Farah. For me, your story Flight was very powerful, and there's a reason for why powerful stories can come from very simple things. And this, for me, in your story, was because you had this very simple lens of the ordinary, of a scene of a mother and a son, cakes versus biryani, and leaving home. And this is something that you assert of the ordinary day and life, but you contextualize it to the xenophobia, to the anti-Muslim sentiment that we have, that has just been growing completely unchecked in our country. And what to me is that powerful assertion of the everyday, of the ordinary, of what is natural to different communities. And do you think your storytelling is a part of collective grief sharing also? Because your story also takes place on Independence Day. And although there are so many metaphors there that we could pick out, some of them are very obvious ones, which is fine. Can you tell us from a craft perspective of your story, what you were trying to show your readers?
I think my connection is not so good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So I wrote this piece in response to whatever is happening in this country. And since I have two kids, you are forced to acknowledge it. Like earlier, till my late 30s, I was like an ostrich. But once my kids started growing, I was forced to acknowledge my identity. And I was privileged enough not to acknowledge it before. And I realized that I need to write what I feel. And this space gave me that. And yes, it is a collective grief. It's a grief of a mom. It's a grief of a loss of an idea about what India entails for all of us. So that is there. But it's also about hope. So all is not lost. There are small kids who are doing this, and because it's an Independence Day, there is hope. And initially, the story was only about the mother and the child. And then I showed it to my daughter, who's my beta reader. So she told me that you need to flesh it out. You need to do something about it more, place it in this context. And I'm glad I listened to her, even though she's all of 14 right now. And because this whole lynching and lives, but it impinges on our consciousness. So that is how it goes. And that's why this story came up.
Thank you for sharing that, Farah. I think it's also really important because of how complicated our positionality can be. Even if we occupy different marginalized identities, there are still levels of privilege. And I'm glad that you said that, it still wasn't affecting you, but then you realize, no, this is the time where, you don't wait till it knocks on your door. And that's so important. That's one of the hugest parts of why all of these voices are so important, because we don't wait until it knocks on our door. We're speaking for and in solidarity with others. Yeah,
and this anthology and the editors gave me that space. I really liked the idea, and it somehow popped up. I was not friends with any one of them, and this Facebook post popped up, and I was so happy for the space and the way they had constituted. It's amazing, and I'm glad the book is there for all of us to read and learn. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to just point one thing. So Farah was talking about her 14-year-old daughter reading this story and suggesting a lot of changes. So it hit me really hard that a 14-year-old has to actually live with the idea in her mind that there are people outside, there's lynching happening. And I don't think any 14-year-old should actually be concerned about all these things, because that's such a gentle age and there's so many things happening around you, and this is not the thing that you should be looking at. But the fact that she's so mature Farah, just tell her that we all love her and more power to her.
Yeah, I think she's there, she's listening, and more power to all of us.
Thank you. And thank you, Anushri, for that. That was, I mean, it's horrific to hear that reality when you just articulated it, and you're absolutely right. There's no. Rish. Rish is here.
Yep. Hi.
Hello, Rish. Okay, so you have two powerful pieces here. I'm going to kind of talk about two of them really quickly, but you can talk about it however you want to in whatever mixed order. So the first one that you talk about is the everyday reality of coming out, the constant lens the world forces people and expected gender roles and presumptions made on gender, right? Which is a huge burden, but also something that is constantly something that you have to do every day, whether you like it or not. But you also claim there's freedom in this, freedom to not only just to be you, but to also have the agency to be angry and demand more from the world. So is there freedom in the articulation of anger in context to a world that is so cishet normalized, even at the risk of having to assert self again and again and again? And do you think that even in these narratives, because we live in such a cis heterosexual world, do you think there are parts of queer anger and love that are romanticized to suit the cishet world? And secondly, the second piece of yours is you brought up illness, food, self-care, plus the grief and unpredictability of your own body when it's chronically ill. But the way you brought up all these themes is through recipes. And this is a really exceptional way of using craft to surprise your reader, right? This is the interesting part about storytelling. You can bring a completely new perspective to a reader, giving a very unexpected narrative. So do you see yourself as a writer who explores storytelling with unexpected narratives or in directions that allow readers to look at familiar or resonating themes from really oddly surprising perspectives?
So I'm going to go with the first question first, right? I think as Piyusha had mentioned earlier, these consequences are not our burdens to carry. A lot of, in that first piece about like what they won't tell you about coming out, the anger that's there is what looks like anger from the outside in a lot of ways, right? In this, as you said, cishet normative world, trans pain and trans suffering and trans tears and trans anger have been romanticized. How many happy trans stories do we see, right? And a lot of the point of me writing these things was that, because when I take this burden and this frustration of a cis person not understanding, and I put it aside and I'm like, well, that is not my problem. There is so much freedom in that. And a lot of times it looks like anger from the outside because it was supposed to be me being angry that I'm being misgendered. It was supposed to be me being hurt. And I've said, well, this is your problem, really. And
yes.
It's the joy and freedom and support in that.
Thank you for that. That was much needed.
As for the second part, right? Like a lot of times I think I didn't think of it as craft and I didn't think of it as an unexpected perspective towards illness and everything. And not because I'm trying to like dismiss myself and like minimize my writing, but because I think it's just a difference in perspective, because a lot of times we focus on othering anyone who isn't cis, het, monogamous, able-bodied, neurotypical, and everything. And in all of that othering, we forget to look at the very basic similarities. And so the unexpected, like relatable, everything comes, I think, also because of people's perception of, oh, but you're chronically ill, it must be different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that
Yes.
for me, because when I was reading the recipes, they were very soothing, and I still found it a bit. So I'm someone who has chronic migraines, and for me, it is been weirdly food reading, which has soothed me. I still thought, and I have read stuff that has been about just trying to cook simple meals when you're ill or just not feeling up to it, depression, so many things. But I don't know. I think there is a very interesting craft, for my experience, a crafting of the way you allowed me as a reader to see that world through the way you were cooking.
I think I know what you're talking about. And like, I have a lot of these recipes and I call them my like low spoons, my depression meals and everything, because it involves very little actual standing up and doing anything on the stove. It involves very little monitoring what's going on. And it's mostly like, recipes that will cook themselves. But the idea of you deserve something nice and you still care about flavor and enjoying yourself and caring for yourself. And that doesn't change because you're chronically ill, and that doesn't change. Like your taste buds don't disappear because you're chronically ill, and your joy of cooking doesn't disappear. So a lot of it is also about adapting the same processes and the same ideas and the same life things that I enjoy, but to me and personalizing it. Yeah.
Thank you. I really enjoyed.
I think like the central thing for both my pieces for me is the joy, the personal joy.
Yeah. And I really like what you said about the first part, is that it's just like, why is just simply being myself what other people have to say my problem? And that's all from that's the projection of the cishet norm world. And it's just deeply liberating when you say that, to just hear it with no BS. So thank you for that, Rish.
Thank you. And I'm so glad to be here as well.
So next, Shivpriya, are you back? I think you said 5 minutes. I'm not sure if you're back yet.
Hi, I'm back.
Yeah. You're back? Okay, hi. Hi, Shivpriya.
Hello.
So, Shivpriya, your poem, Bulky, I Taking Over Blank Spaces, really questions the performance and subsequent limitations of gender. It tells us that the body might be simply just housing the expectations of gender in us. And it really liberates the idea of it so much, where, which is what actual intersectional feminism aims to embrace, at least theoretically. I want to know how you feel about the limitless spectrum of queerness as a response to our social expectations, you personally, or just what you've gathered in your own observations. Do you believe writing queerness is also a space to know ourselves and how we want to act in the world without the clutches of predetermined sexuality and gender roles? There's a passage in your poem, I is real, wants to be real, tries hard to not jut out, and yet queerly stuck like a fishbone in the throat. To me, that speaks so much about our simultaneous ability to see and unsee or hide parts of ourselves, and things that we can, that we think we can ignore, but some of that will remain, just how you aptly said, like the fishbone in the throat. I'd love to know what you processed individually and maybe collectively while writing this poem.
Okay, that's a great observation, Rhea. Thank you so much for that question. So for me, coming out has never been a linear journey, and it's always been, occupying a space to and fro, moving to and fro in that space, both for the outside society and your inner circle, and also yourself. So I think in this poem, I think this poem itself is just an attempt at making this space a little more tangible for myself, because I know that I've been occupying this space now and then, but then you also know that it's not even there. It's not real. But so, how do you occupy something while also being aware that it's never there? and I think it was very desperate of me when I wrote I is real, wants to be real. I think that it's out of desperation to be something. And and also like when I wrote this poem, like that was the end of my writing my thesis, almost at the tail end of writing my thesis, and my thesis was on queer literature. So as you would know, like I was looking for love poems, queer love poems, and in an attempt to grab some meaning and feel that I belong in literature as much as anywhere else. And I think that is how this poem came about, because I felt there was a void even within literature. And I think I was too desperate.
I like the way, I think I really appreciate the word that you use, the word desperate in. I see a lot of feelings in those lines, in most of the poem actually. And I don't think there can be enough literature in this, because every poem that questions the restrictions of gender roles, and whenever we embrace queerness in what we're writing, I think there's just a space made for somebody who we didn't hear. Every time we do it, there's just always a space created. So thank you for that, and thank you for what you put there, because I think what you shared with us is very vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria.
Is Tanushree?
Ria, I'm sorry, before you move on, I just want to let you know that we're being told that we're running out of time. We only have about 6 minutes left. So we won't have much time for the Q&A. So just letting the audience know that if you have any questions for the editors or authors, just send them to us on social media and we'll try and get a reply to you. So sorry about that.
No problem. We will finish off with our last three writers here. So we have Tanushree. You hear Tanushree? Sorry, I can't see you. Hello? Can anyone hear Tanushree? No.
No, can't.
All right. Should I wait to go with someone else until?
Yeah, we can probably move on to the next author.
Yes, please.
Sonia?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Sonia.
Hi, everyone.
So, Sonia, in your poem, The Devi Has Arrived, you encourage the possibility of being unabashed in movement and expression of the body in a world that obviously polices and tones it for various patriarchal benefits. This poem was inspired, you said, by the possessed girls you saw in a small village in the mountains that you were living in for a while. Ones that had been believed to be possessed by the Devi, right? And in this way, for me, this alludes to the idea that religion and faith also can be spaces for women to be things and do things that they normally would be considered taboo, right? Do you think that we can subvert patriarchy by finding freedom in spaces that were built on the metrics of patriarchal oppression? For example, the superstructure of religion as we understand it is still very patriarchal, but there's still a lot of ways to subvert it. Like you said, it is socially sanctioned for someone to be unabashedly dancing if they're saying that they're under the a religious trance. So do you think that writers who write about freedom still feel that they have to contain their words or thoughts or censor themselves as well? And that's a question for you writing this point.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Ria. Well, yes, I do think first thing we have to understand is that it all depends on the dynamics, family dynamics and community dynamics. And the fact that religion, faith, or whatever, all of this is interpreted differently by different communities, families, which we've seen over ages. In my own because I come from the hills, every few kilometers, the same tradition is interpreted in a different way. So yes, to a large extent, I do think that patriarchy has tweaked a lot of it to play those power games. You understand how the power games work. So definitely, and not in totality. I am not saying in totality. Definitely, there is a lot of subversion. But wherever and if there is space for those who, you can say on the fringes, for them to exercise their will, it has been subverted. So yes, there are a lot of spaces where we can, but it's the power games that have played, and it's a lot of it is on personal interpretation as well, interpretation of community. And and of course, the second part that you asked about writers not being able to express themselves, yes, again, because I think it's got a lot to do with our grooming. Now, coming to my own poem, The Devi Has Arrived. Well, traditionally, coming from a traditional setup where it's almost blasphemous to question something like that. So in that case, when you want to write about it, this idea was in my mind for a long time. And to write about it, yes, you have to put down a lot of that grooming, and you have to come out of that censorship of your own thought. So yeah, that does happen. That does happen to writers. Thank you. And I'm so glad I got the opportunity to share this here, because I've just been thinking about it for a long time. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your work, Sonia.
Thank you.
So Maya with us?
Yes, I'm there. Can you hear me, all of you?
Can hear you. You can hear me, right, Samaya?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
So Maya, in your autobiographical account, My Life in a Sighted World, you paint a stark and devastating picture of a girl who has a visual disability, and how a lack of inclusive learning, in a lack of inclusive learning spaces threatens to extinguish her future. And you show that this can happen due to layers of systemic issues, right? A family that does not find worth in their child if she can't perform in a certain way or certain metrics, violence, abuse, a school especially that can't understand that there are so many needs to be met for disabled students and neurodivergent students. And lastly, to the child herself, who now might hold the idea that she may not be worth anything, all because multiple systems failed her. Do you think stories like this can bring about reflections and dialogue between the people who have more agency in changing the system? I myself am someone who was failed by the Indian schooling system. But if I hadn't gotten a chance to write, and of course that needs so many privileges and agencies too, I would have never thought I was capable of anything. How has writing allowed you to expand your ideas of self-agency and social change?
See, when I started writing, I had one thing in mind, that these experiences are actually unspeakable. If you write an article or an essay on this would not have impact on the general public, because they would tend to think, okay, this is what has happened, it's a fact. But in order to change the society, you should communicate via stories, because when people read stories, they can see themselves, view themselves as character. The character is reflected in their mind, and that's how they can feel the effect and how this can have an impact on a child's psychology. And me, myself, being an educator, I'm teaching at a university. So when I reflect back to those days at school, I can certainly say that, well, I did not get support from my teachers, nor my fellow classmates, even my family, as you have mentioned, that things were getting totally against my concerns. But yet I strive to rose up just to show that, yes, you can make it if you have endeavors. And these struggles, like my story is about my struggles at school in terms of acquiring education, but sitting in this position as a lecturer at a premier university of Bangladesh, I can certainly say that this has happened, but I made it to the position where I am today. And by reading my stories, I would say that for those who are struggling, who are having difficulties in terms of disability or in terms of any form of depression, poverty, whatever, this would give them a sense of empowerment, a sense of agency, because when they read my story, at the same time, they look at my biography, they could relate that, look at where she was at that point and where she is today. Thank you very much. And certainly it's a privilege to be a part of this anthology, and my heartiest gratitude to all the editors who has appreciated my piece and given me a space in this anthology.
Sumaya, thank you so much. It's an absolute celebration to hear that you're talking about this from so many layers of saying that there is no matter, I mean, unfortunately, it is the system that is still inflicting the amount of suffering and psychological damage that happens when a child is failed by the system. But I love the way that you offer not only hope, but solidarity and hope with the entire system that is kind of just keeps failing people every day, even today. So thank you so much, Sumaya.
I just want to add one thing that like I belong to a population of 16 million and only 10% are disabled, and among which many of them are unemployed. So I would always say that getting an employment in such a society in terms of so much hostility, I would say is a matter of agency in my terms, and the struggles that I have endured, which would certainly bring a positive vibe to others who have some struggles in some form or the other. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And absolutely it will. Is Tanushri with us at all? Don't think so. Okay. I think, was there another video we wanted to play of one more writer?
Yes, there's one video that we need to play, and there's one message that we need to read out. Madhubanti's message. I'll just read that out. Give me a second, please. Right. So Madhubanti says this with reference to her personal essay, No, But Where Are You Really From? Which is part of the anthology. She says, my essay for the anthology, Right and Power, is titled No, But Where Are You Really From? And I've realized that it was an attempt to explore what happened to me when I found myself re/dislocated. Much to my surprise, even discomfort, I found that what I had mistaken for comfort was the familiarity of constriction, and what I had thought was unmitigated loss had also provided an opportunity for a partial, imperfect, but precious reinvention. As a professional editorial project manager myself, I am usually on the other side of the editing process. It was thus really fulfilling to find that some of these discoveries came to me through my editor, Meenal Srivastava, gently but effectively persuading me to rethink my biases and the very specific narrative I had constructed for myself. The voice that is in the anthology is undeniably mine, but I think it is a better, more nuanced one than the one I had originally presented. And there, for me, is the beauty of this collaboration and this anthology.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for reading that out, Vijay Lakshmi.
Thank you, dear. Thank you.
I think our last author, we have a video from Tashfia Ahmed.
Yes, Vijay Shanti will be playing that.
Everyone, my name is Tashfia Ahmed and I am from Bangladesh, and I'm one of the contributing poets in Right and Power. So first of all, hello everyone, my name is Tashfia Ahmed and I am from Bangladesh, and I'm one of the contributing poets in Rajan Power. So first of all, I want to convey my heartiest thanks to Vijayalakshmi Harish and the entire team behind Rajan Power that made it possible. You guys, I must say, are doing God's work in providing this platform for putting out all these marginalized voices out there. So moving on. Um, so I have three of my poems appearing in Red and Power, and I'll just take some time to introduce each of them. So first of all, there's a joke I'm not allowed to laugh at, and I wrote this during one of my most vulnerable points in life. I was truly at rock bottom, and it was just a realization of how constricted a woman's life is. So yeah, it's just all my experiences as a cisgendered woman. And then there's Phidiophilia, which was mainly just me coming to terms with my internalized misogyny and getting over it, and sort of combined with my own queerness. So I hope those are experiences that a lot of the readers can relate with. And then finally, there's A Color That Defines Me. And this poem, it's really close to my heart because it's about the celebration of womanhood, and it I just wanted to really convey how many shades there are to womanhood, how it's a whole spectrum, and it's a beautiful spectrum of colors. Um, and like it's something that's not just limited to the female anatomy. So yeah, that's all. So thank you everyone. Thank you to the team behind Ride and Power for having me, and stay safe everyone. Take your COVID shots and wear a mask. Bye. Hello everyone, my name is
Ria, I'm sorry, before we proceed, another one of the authors in the book, I mean, she had written for the book anonymously, and she's watching this, but she doesn't want to come out and speak herself. She sent me a message saying what she wants to talk about. Her pieces in the book are by the name of Pari, and she says, "Thank you for giving a public platform for my poetry, my feelings and experiences, something that I was scared of sending out in the world. I'm still in the situation that these poems talk of, and hope that the speaking out gives me the strength to make some real changes. Thank you." Over to you, Ria. Thank you.
I know we're running out of time, and I will let Ria have the last word. But before we do that, I just wanted to really thank Mohammed Sami and Dr. Anna and Satish and all of the team in Dubai and India that allowed us to do this and has helped us put this together. But now I will pass the mic on back to you, Ria. I didn't want to forget to do that because they've really put in a lot of effort and work, and at almost literally the last minute notice. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Meenal. And I'm just going to go ahead and just thank everyone for being here. And yes, thank you to Team Dubai for helping us and allowing this to happen. This is so important. To all our editors who made this happen with just one desire and one dream, and all of you that came together, it is beautiful. And I hope that this can be sustained and recreate and reimagine so many different things. To our writers who were absolutely delivered courageous, beautiful work that really allows everybody to question, challenge, and negotiate with the world in a new way. Thank you so much. And to our partners at Haadibadi. And if maybe everybody wants to hold up the book, if you have a copy, does somebody want to take a picture? Thank you everyone for being here. This was truly, truly a tremendous and powerful experience for me personally. I really hope it was for you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
And a last thanks to Ria and Kirti as well for putting our book forward so beautifully. I'm just full of joy and gratitude to everyone. Thank you all. I hope you have a nice day or a nice night.
Yeah, wherever you are.